hosts feel it would be a little unkind to present this podcast without just a word of friendly warning. We are about to unfold the story of Frankenstein, a man of science who sought to create a man after his own image without reckoning upon God. It is one of the strangest tales ever told. It deals with the two great mysteries of creation, life and death. I think it will thrill you. It may shock you. It might even horrify you. So if any of you feel that you do not care to subject your nerves to such a strain, now's your chance to. Well, we've warned you. Welcome to the Frankencast, episode 3. I am the son of the Mad Doctor, Anthony Bowman. My pronouns are he, him, and I'm joined by...
the amalgamated remains of Eric Velasquez. My pronouns are he and him as well. And we're getting this started with the son, not the bride, not the brother, the son of Frankenstein.
Yes. So, yeah, this one, we've got our first not directed by James Whale Frankenstein film. Also our last Karloff as the monster Frankenstein film. Also featuring Bela Lugosi, famously Dracula, among other things, and also a bit of a rival to Boris Karloff, which I'm sure we'll get into. Also, I noticed on the credits, the top billing, Basil Rathbone as the son of Frankenstein. And I was curious because I was like, well, maybe he deserved top billing. You know, he's doing the Sherlock Holmes movies. But I looked, and the first Sherlock Holmes movie was like a couple months after this. It came out like literally like I think 2 or 3 months after this one came out. So he was kind of an up-and-comer, but I guess just because of the role, I guess he got top billing.
Yeah, I think at this point in time, this was basically his, not exactly his starting movie, but it definitely helped kick him off. He is, what was it? He was in David Copperfield first.
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah, he had a couple movies, but nothing like, nothing
big,
huge. Yeah, and then of course,
right.
He's mostly known now for his Holmes movies, but
right.
I guess this was. I mean, I guess if this came out, or if the Holmes movie came out like 2 months after this, they were probably shot pretty close together. Before either one had come out.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, we forgot that Bela Lugosi was playing the infamous Ygor.
Ah, yes, first appearance of Ygor. I also noticed in the credits, like, it's spelled with a Y.
Right, yeah.
Which is, I guess, like, more the German way, but, now we tend to see it just like, Igor. Which, leads later to the Ygor kind of jokes.
Exactly. Dwight Frye played the parts of Fritz in the first one, Carl in the second one, and then he's just completely replaced by Ygor and Bela Lugosi in this one as the almost henchman character.
Yeah, and comically enough, I feel like when people talk about like the stereotypical Ygor character, they're really more picturing like what Dwight Frye was doing. Like Lugosi's Ygor is, he does have like the crooked neck and everything, but like he has like that like thick beard and everything. He doesn't look like what you usually see, like in Young Frankenstein. We keep coming back to that, but like the stereotypical hunchback that we're used to seeing.
Right, and well, honestly, he's not even really an assistant. He's actually kind of one of the... he's kind of the guy in charge, actually, where Frankenstein, to a degree, is playing... or the son of Frankenstein, is playing kind of his assistant.
Yeah, I mean, Igor definitely is, like, pushing the action forward. Like, he's the one who knows things, he knows what's going on with the creature, and he's sort of pushing Wolf around, getting him to do his bidding, and also getting the creature to do his bidding. He's definitely the one in charge.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it's like Ygor was the one with the plan this time around, and Wolf von Frankenstein was kind of playing second fiddle, to pardon a later pun, or to call back to a later reference. Yeah, so we begin on a matte painting from the word go. Looks, once again, German Expressionism is in full view here. All of the buildings are slightly skewed, or rather distorted. And then at the very bottom, you have a single guard just kind of composite shot into the matte painting.
Yep. And then it cuts in a little bit, and you see like the front of the building where you've actually got like a facade, and there's like this really cool nameplate above the door that just says Frankenstein, but the letters are all weird. They're like different sizes. It looks crazy, but I hadn't really noticed it before this watch, and I was just like, man, I want that sign.
Yeah, it's like they named random places after the Frankenstein family, but they all hate the Frankenstein family, so it's kind of a weird mixed bag there, right?
Yeah, so that's what we get to. Like, I guess the next scene is you've got this sort of like town council, and they are not happy that the son of Frankenstein is returning to the town of Frankenstein. The town's been shunned. Nobody wants, their tourism is just decimated because no one wants to come to this town where there's a monster that wreaks havoc every few months.
Right, as actual reality would show you, that would not be the case, especially with all the Dracula tours and other things like that are going around.
Yeah, they need to get on that like dark tourism thing.
Exactly. Yeah, they could have been ahead of the game, but they chose to set back. I guess the trauma was still fresh, though.
Too soon.
So I understand. Yeah, too soon. Exactly.
So then, I think that they're arguing over. I guess the Baron Henry had a bunch of scientific papers that he has willed to his son, and the council is sort of, I guess, bound by his last will and testament to give these papers over, but they don't really seem to be very excited about that.
Yeah, they definitely would prefer to keep the Frankenstein family away if they could.
Yeah.
But yeah, they do talk about the Frankenstein heritage. We also meet Inspector Krog.
Oh man, he's a great character. I don't. Do you see his whole arm thing in the first scene, or does that pop up later?
Yeah, I believe he definitely mentions it. That his. Let me double check on that. I do think he mentions here that when he was just a wee little nipper, that whenever the Frankenstein monster was roaming the countryside, that it happened to grab his arm and rip it out of the socket.
Yeah, so, I mean, like, that story's gruesome, and, it's definitely just sort of, like, it builds to the lore that, like, the creature's doing stuff outside of when we're watching the movies, he's up to things that we don't get to see, which is kind of nice. It kind of, expands the universe a little bit. But also, watching it, I kept thinking, like, is this performance, was it an inspiration on Peter Sellers and Dr. Strangelove? Just the way that he manipulates his own hand and everything. Like, it just felt very much like the way that Dr. Strangelove is always, like, fighting with his one arm.
Right. I feel like it was a definite nod, at least. And Dr. Strangelove was a nod to this.
And the thing about the Inspector is, like, I mean, it's so over the top, it's so ridiculous, but he plays it so straight and so serious that, yeah, it's just done so well.
Right, you got to buy it,
Yeah.
Normally it would be cheesy, but it's like, no, this guy has some deep, lingering hatred for the family because of what that monster did to his arm.
Yeah, and so then I guess we go to the train where the Frankenstein family is on their way to the town. Mm-hmm. And little bits there that I thought were interesting is Wolf mentions that as far as the Frankenstein family is concerned, all the blame goes to Fritz. Like, they are not responsible for all of these mishaps. Like,
if only he'd gotten that normal brain.
Yeah.
That one from Abby.
Exactly. Henry was doing some legitimate scientific experiments, and then his inept sidekick messed everything up, caused all these deaths in the town, and then it all gets blamed on the Frankenstein family. It's just not fair.
Right. It's just wrong.
And then he even goes so far as to say, at this point, like 9 out of 10 people even just call the creature Frankenstein.
Right?
So
what a good nod.
Yeah. So again, we've got confirmation. 9 out of 10 doctors recommend that you call the creature Frankenstein. It's fine.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. I mean, he's part of the family. Even later on, they mention that they're brothers.
Exactly.
So effectively, he's a Frankenstein. It's okay.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, they're brought to Bahnhof Frankenstein, where they meet the entire town after the little train trip, and once again they're given a greeting. Definitely not a warm one. Probably they're thinking about bringing torches, sure, but other than that, they're fairly cold to the doctor.
Yeah, in fact, he starts to give this like speech about how he's so glad to be back in town and that he's, he doesn't really apologize. He's like, my father was, he does like the sorry not sorry thing basically, and the town just all like walks off. Like everybody's just like, exactly. Nah, forget this. They just leave. And so like by the end of his little speech, it's just like him and the burgomaster. He's like, here's your paperwork, here's your keys, leave us alone.
Mm-hmm. Don't cause any trouble or create any new life. Don't do that.
Yeah. And so then they get to the house, and I thought it was kind of interesting. Like in the first movie, you have like the house where the family, or where the old Baron lives, and like it's like a house. Like it looks nice. It's a mansion. It's got decorations and paintings on the wall and upholstered furniture and stuff, and then you've got Henry's lab on the hill that's all ramshackle, and everything looks very thrown together and gothic. But right, now
the house itself is all stark.
Yeah, like even like the stairs look like they're just like put together with 2x4s. Like everything looks very thrown together. And at first I was like, are they just living in the lab? But then, as you get a little further in, you see that, no, the lab's next door. But I guess they just decided they wanted the house to look spooky for this movie, too. So we're just going to kind of ignore that continuity, forget the pretty house. We're just going full goth this time.
Well, let me try to be a little cerebral on this. Do you think that maybe it looks that way just because it's infected with the madness of Dr. Frankenstein?
I like that. Yeah,
it's complete BS, but it actually does seem to flow because, like as we mentioned in the first episode, like there were key moments where everything looks disjointed and weird, and then in the Bride of Frankenstein, there's a little bit more of that, but here it's like it's in your face that the German expressionists like references, and once again you have weird stairs that go up one flight, but then level out for a long period of time where you wouldn't have that in real life.
Yeah, it is almost like the cancer has spread to the house. You've got like the weird gargoyles that like overlook the dining room, and I mean, I love it. It's great.
That's what we'll say. That's our take on it.
Yep, I like this theory.
Right, and once again, Benson, our servant and butler to Wolf von Frankenstein, said he had to actually hire a group of people from the Tyroleans, as the locals would not come to work at Castle or House Frankenstein.
Yeah, and so Benson like came with them, so he's like the family servant who's like carried on, and he will continue to be a fairly large minor character in the story. And so I guess at this point we got the Baron. He talks about that he didn't even know his father, which there's definitely some weird timeline stuff. I'm not sure exactly when the Baron had kids, where he was, or when Henry specifically. I guess they're all the Baron. That's not a very useful term. When Henry had Wolf, like when that happened, and why Wolf never met Henry. Like, did he go back to doing more experiments? Did he leave the family? Did he die young? It's kind of unclear, but regardless, Henry doesn't really have any memory of his father, but he definitely seems to idolize what his father did and is very curious, and so he's eager to get into those papers that the burgomaster gave him.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and then they, once again, as you said, they go through the library, they start mentioning everything that the former Baron was going through, everything that was left to Wolf, and Benson's talking about how the townsfolk are already calling them names without them really knowing about it, or behind their back. So, and, we all hope that Wolf inherits the Frankenstein fortune, but as they say, hopefully not the fate of Frankenstein. But I believe a little storm is brewing at this point.
Yeah, of course, you got to have the dark and stormy nights.
Mm-hmm.
So, you got, there's thunder and lightning, and, again, it just looks great. I think there's one particular scene, I think it's a little bit ahead of this, but there's like a huge picture window, and the storm out the window looks amazing. Like it's a matte painting, but there's like active lightning in it. I'm not sure if it's done with lighting or what, but it looks great.
Right.
It's more expressionism. Everything's heightened. Everything looks larger than life, but it's perfect for this. But yeah, so we see the storm. We've got Ygor. He's peeking in, spying on the family a little bit. Mm-hmm. Oh, and here's where the inspector shows up and meets the family, and you really get to see his prosthetic arm in action. I think he does like a salute where he has to move his hand into place and then lower it back down with his working arm.
Yeah, and that gag will be repeated in a later installment. So, and those who know what it's going to be. It's not a direct mainline sequel, but it definitely does a very good job of summing up all three of these movies.
Oh, man. Yep, absolutely. And yeah, so the inspector kind of talks to the family and says that their family name is stained. He doesn't believe the creature's dead, but the Baron has this idea that the creature's deeds have been exaggerated. Oh, and that's when the Baron, or when the inspector tells the story of his arm, because Wolf is like, oh, I don't think it's nearly as bad as all the rumors. And then the inspector's like, yeah, well, let me tell you about where I got this fake arm.
Mm-hmm. That's right. So they go through that, and then a little bit after that, well, they actually go back to their rooms at some point. And let me ask you this. I feel that this is a product of the time, but having two beds diagonally almost facing away from each other, but also towards each other, like in that little weird V pattern.
Oh, yeah.
So
the separate beds thing definitely feels like, that just was like the old sitcom trope or whatever. And they do, like, I think one of the servants mentions that, like, putting the beds head to head like that was some sort of way to ward off evil spirits or something.
Yeah, so they explain it away by saying if the house is being full of dread, place the beds head to head to ward off the evil. That's her little rhyme that she goes with it. So people aren't, like, the older generation doesn't look at that and go, well, that's really weird that you don't have a husband and wife in the same bed. But the people of that time are like, well, that's a little racy. We don't want to be that racy.
Yeah.
So, which is a very odd thing.
Somewhere in there, I think the inspector mentions sort of like the main story of the movie, which is that there are a series of unsolved murders where all of the victims' hearts were burst. I think they were all strangled, and then their hearts were burst inside their chests.
Yeah, I think he mentions they all had a blow to the back of the neck or the base of the neck, and then their hearts burst. Yeah,
so that's sort of like the Baron is the whole time, or not the Baron, I'm sorry, the inspector the whole time is trying to figure out this, solve this case of this string of murders.
Right, because 6 of their most prominent citizens have died from this.
Which, like, this movie's got, like, the body count is already, that high before the movie even starts.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think during the, like, or after the seeing the bedroom, then we get to see young Frankenstein, Peter, mm-hmm. And Ygor is peeking through a little panel in the wall watching him. And this kid is, like, definitely my least favorite part about this movie. He's, like, so, like, annoyingly precocious, and I'm sure that they thought it would make, that it, like, would draw in some other people's attention, like that it was like, oh, we should put something cute in the movie so that the girlfriends, like, they're gonna have something to pay attention to. But man, that kid's just annoying.
Right. He even has, have you noticed he has his own catchphrase in the movie? Whenever he meets someone new, he always screams out something to the effect of, well, hello there. Like every time he's awake and actually meeting a relatively new character or just walking into the room, it's basically, well, hello there.
That's fun. Yeah, I hadn't caught that, but yeah, I mean, he's always talking about animals. He goes on these imaginary hunts where he, like, hunts elephants and giraffes and tigers and stuff.
Oh yeah, and rhinos and everything, yeah.
Which, like, he's just one of those, like, imaginative kids or whatever that's always telling stories, which later kind of comes into play. But yeah, he drove me crazy. So yeah, after Igor's watching the kid, we have the Baron goes and decides to investigate the destroyed lab. And it turns out, I mean, it's in rough shape, but there's more still together than expected. Like, because, I mean, at the end of the last movie, when the creature threw that switch, everything was supposed to be just blown to atoms, and there's still a little bit going on there. It needs some work, but the Baron's
you
definitely...
can tell the top's collapsed.
Yeah, the top's gone, and there's, rubble around and stuff. But, between, like, the going through those papers and stuff and this, you can tell the Baron, or, like, that Wolf is definitely curious to maybe continue his father's work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and isn't he already bringing in several devices? They call them devil machines.
Yeah, he's got all kinds of odds and ends, and of course there's the table there that was there before, and he's, his whole plan is almost cut short when Ygor pushes a rock from the ceiling and tries to crush him.
Right, no mention of anything, just push rock, boom, and we do see Ygor gingerly standing behind the rock as the Doctor enters in. So you're like, oh, what's he going to do? Is he really going to try and kill this guy who he more or less knows is going to be his one ticket to revive the creature or the monster?
Yeah, and the whole time he's standing there, like, you're just looking at that rock, and you can just tell the way it's painted and the way the set looks. You're just like, that rock is going to move. So he's
right at some point. Yeah,
he's going to have to push this rock down. And yep, sure enough, he does. So then that's when Ygor tells his little backstory that he was hanged, his neck was broken, he was pronounced dead, but he lived. So, I guess through some sort of double jeopardy rules, because he was was pronounced dead, they can't hang him again.
They can't kill me again. Exactly. But that was a cool prosthetic that they did on his neck.
Oh, yeah.
Like the disc was slipped.
Yeah, there's like one part in the movie where he like taps it, and it looks gross. It's really well done.
Yeah, and the sound that went with that was like, ooh, it caused my neck to just go, ow.
Yeah.
But at this point, we also get a mention of a sulfur pit. We didn't know there was a sulfur pit under the lab before. Yeah,
I guess, at the beginning of Bride, there's like the sort of like mud hole that he pulls the family down at the beginning, and, I guess it was sulfur this whole time, and we just had no idea.
No idea.
Oh, and I did like there was a line from Ygor when he's explaining why he was hanged. He mentions that he said, "I stole bodies," they said. Like, he's very, like, allegedly.
Right.
But he's not going to really admit it.
Yeah, that's what I like about Ygor. He never commits. He has definitely spoken to his lawyer. He knows exactly what he should be saying at what time. And he throws in a lot of the allegedlys. Like, oh, well, they said I got some bodies for your father there, so just decided to hang me for it.
And then right off, they've just met, and immediately Igor's like, well, let me just show you this hidden compartment in the wall, and I'll show you your father's crypt and the creature who's asleep on a slab.
Yeah, apparently he's in a coma. I believe they said he was struck by lightning at this point while he was out hunting. What was he hunting? But who knows? Lightning hit him, and now he's asleep. It brought him back. I guess it'll put him to sleep.
So there's like really no sort of follow through on the last movie. So like there was something happened. He managed to survive that. Started working with Ygor. He's been hunting. There's all this, and then later he got struck by lightning. Totally unrelated. There's like a whole secret movie that happened between 2 and 3 here.
I want to see that movie where Henry goes back.
Yeah.
And revives or recreates the monster and brings in Ygor as his third assistant.
Yeah. And then the Baron touches the creature's hand. It moves, echoing the previous 2 movies where you get the, moving hand scene. And so, of course, Wolf has to say, he's alive.
He's alive. Absolutely.
Which is definitely the catchphrase of this whole series.
Exactly. And did you notice that, like, Ygor specifically said, the monster is my friend. He does things for me.
Yes.
What I'm saying is there's a tone with Ygor and the monster. They are friends, possibly roommates. I'll leave that there.
Yeah. And yeah, you definitely get like a sense that it's kind of like Lenny and what's the other guys? The from Of Mice and Men. Like you get this,
Lenny and George.
Yes, George. So you get this sense that like Ygor is maybe a little bit taking advantage of his larger friend, but obviously the creature, for 2 movies now has been looking for a friend, so you can't begrudge him that. Like he's got a friend, he's going to help his friend out, and it seems like a mutually beneficial arrangement, other than the fact that he got struck by lightning now and is stuck in a coma.
I'll come out and say this. I think that they're in love, quite frankly, because they go through a lot for each other in different ways. One, Ygor is, and don't get me wrong, this is definitely subtext. It's never explicitly stated, but Ygor always wants to be around the monster. The monster will do anything for Ygor. There's a deeper connection here.
Oh yeah, I think that's like you said. It's not overt, but it's not hard to read into that. Of course, as we've talked about, especially with the last 2 movies, there was a lot of queer coding in those movies because James Whale was intentionally putting that in there. I don't know as much about this director. I'm not sure what his intentions were, but you definitely feel like that sort of tone has carried over from the previous films.
Do you think that maybe he was honoring James Whale?
Could be, yeah.
That's fair, and I could definitely see that.
And again, you can't begrudge
no,
like the creature. Ygor has had a pretty rough go of things. Like he's nobody seems to really care about Ygor. To the point that they kill him and they're just like, it's fine, whatever, we can just let him go. But he's definitely a pariah in the town as much as the creature is. So of course, absolutely, they build a bond out of being sort of the outcasts, right?
And if you also remember in the tombs, one of the things he said is, "This is place of I'm not gonna do the accent, but this is the place of the dead. We're all dead here." Yeah.
I like that line a lot.
He's referring to himself. He's referring to the monster. He's referring to, even to a degree, maybe Wolf, since he entered that place of the dead.
Yeah, and then I think that's when Ygor it comes out and says he wants the Baron to help him bring him back to life, and that's when when Wolf says something about, so you're saying basically that this is my brother, and
exactly,
and Ygor says yes, but his mother was lightning.
Yes. His mother was lightning. What a good line.
Yeah.
This one's full of good lines. There's a few in the other ones, they're definitely memorable. But Bela Lugosi put some spice on everything he says. He's doing his best.
He's chewing up the scenery, and it's just fantastic. And then this is where you like Henry, sort of, you get the moment where you see that he's in... Henry's tomb has been defaced, and someone has written on it, "Maker of Monsters," and Wolf goes up and scratches out monsters and writes "men" in big letters.
With a torch.
Yeah,
that's pretty. Hey, that's forward thinking, right?
Yeah.
Then we cut back to the burgomaster's office, where I believe one of them says there's nothing so as disquieting as quiet coming from the Frankenstein castle. So they're definitely already upset that they're not hearing anything. They're just waiting for something to happen. They know it's going to, but it hasn't yet.
Yeah, it's a little too quiet scene. And then they have Ygor there, and they want him to testify as to what he's seen, and he does, but he's very cagey. He does not give them any useful information, as he wouldn't, as he's clearly in on the whole thing.
Yeah, and he even mentions that at this point there were 6 other individuals who should have been in this office that are now dead, but 2 of the guys are still there that sentenced him to hang.
Yeah, so at this point, it's, if you're not picking up what's being put down here, you're not paying attention, because it's coming together pretty strongly at this point, what's been happening, but it's still not said explicitly at this point. And so then we go back to the lab. You have, the Baron putting the creature on the slab, raising him up, doing that whole thing, as we're used to seeing. Oh, and so this is a lot of times when you see pictures of the creature, it's specifically this outfit that he's wearing. In the first 2 movies, he's wearing basically a suit jacket that's a little too small, and you get a lot of the when he raises his arms, the sleeves go up and everything. But then from this point on, he's in this strange sort of furry shirt, And I feel like it's supposed to sort of indicate that, he's been sort of like roaming the countryside as like a wild man. He's like killed some animals and fashioned himself some sort of clothing out of hides or something. And that sort of becomes his like uniform for, I think, the rest of the movies for the most part.
And I think, going back to that, I think that's part of that movie that you were wanting, is that he found probably a shepherd. I'm gonna create this, by the way. I don't care how accurate it is, but it sounds good. And possibly killed the shepherd and took one of his sheep and fashioned that shirt out of one of the sheep's hides. Or vest, I guess it would be more appropriate to call it.
Yeah, I think we're well on our way to creating the screenplay to Frankenstein 2.5 here.
Right, exactly. Cousin of Frankenstein. Or going back to my joke at the beginning, brother of Frankenstein, maybe. I don't know. It could work.
Yeah.
We'll start writing on that script tonight.
All right. Yeah, so then the Baron sort of starts like investigating, looking at the creature. He says he's completely superhuman, which was an interesting like word. I feel like that's a word that gets thrown around a lot more now, but I feel like I don't know, maybe it was more common, but yeah, it doesn't feel like a word you hear mentioned a lot in older films and texts and stuff. I mean, I guess it kind of harkens to like, the Nietzschean like Ubermensch kind of thing, but I thought that, in our world of like superhero movies, it's a very familiar word.
Right. No longer is he just a really durable reanimated corpse. The monster now has a hyperpituitary gland, and apparently it affects the size of the creature, making it larger than normal. And apparently he has 2 bullets in his heart. Heart's working just fine. No issues. It's working around. The blood's working around the heart, is what we're saying here. So, yeah, and it's like all of his cells are kind of acting on their own, but also to work for the monster. I mean, I guess that's kind of how cells work, right? They all work independently anyway, but they're definitely talking it up like it's super impressive for this creature.
Yeah, in this movie, it's interesting, like the last 2 movies have been very like, the science has been very like pseudo-scientific, it's just a lot of like weird lightning things, a lot of electricity, but this, you got like an X-ray, you see the cells under a microscope. It feels a lot more grounded in reality, which I think, do they mention that Wolf is a doctor, or did I imagine that?
He is, but I didn't catch what type of doctor he is in this one, because the other one was a he was a
it was like a magnetic galvanism, something
right?
like that.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, this guy feels like he's like a medical doctor. And maybe they say it, or maybe I just like inferred it from just like some of the equipment he's using and stuff like that. But yeah, you definitely get a sense that he is, more familiar with standard medical science rather than, the strange sciences.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, and also he does have a lot of equipment that he just brought with him for whatever reason into this Eastern European town, or out far away from glitz and glamour.
Yeah, I mean, at first it sort of like feels like the idea is that he's sort of coaxed into helping with this, or that, he got his father's papers and that inspired him, but like he was, he brought that gear with him. He had some plans before he even arrived. Right.
And he hops in like with both feet the moment someone actually suggests that this is a real thing. This is, we can do this. He's like, yes, I am in. Let's go. We're building the monster. Let's go.
He's a lot more eager than Henry was in the second movie. Like he's on board.
Oh yeah, 110%. There is almost no going back the moment he gets hooked. All right, and continuing on.
I think that in this part, it kind of just bounces back and forth between like that court scene and him working in the lab. At some point, he talks about the super-violet rays that they talk about in the first movie, but he says
they weren't super-violet rays.
Now there's
cosmic rays. Yeah. He is a Marvel or DC superhero.
Oh, absolutely.
Well, about the same time they were actually starting to come in, or at least what would become the DC superheroes.
Yeah.
So yes.
And you have this moment where Ygor is just like a jerk and coughs in everybody's faces for no reason.
Right.
Which feels very real right now with people sort of weaponizing their illnesses. But he says he has a bone caught in his throat, and he means his literal
So
spine.
Right. Oh, by the way, he never cops up to actually being a resurrectionist or resurrection man. He says, "I'm just a blacksmith. That's all I do. I build things."
Yeah.
So cagey, I love it.
Yes. And then so then we get to where where Wolf is gonna finally revive the creature. Before he does, here's one of his lines that I thought was really good. He says, "As a man, I should destroy him, but as a scientist, I will do everything in my power to bring him back."
Yeah, absolutely. He's only briefly saying, maybe I shouldn't do this. But then it's like, nah, we're going with this. We're going forward.
And then so the creature gets revived with our familiar electrical science stuff. And he does his famous "Rawr" growl. But so he wakes up, but then he kind of just goes back into the coma, or seems to be. And so Wolf thinks it's back to the drawing board.
Exactly. Maybe they did something wrong. They didn't catch everything right, just the way his father did.
Yeah.
So
then the Wolf heads back to the house, and the inspector has shown up for tea, and they have a little chat in their spooky dining room with the gargoyles on the walls.
Yeah, the boar heads, I believe they mentioned later.
Oh yeah, they are, because they talk about the teeth when
those are gargoyles. We know the truth.
And then Peter comes out and talks about his hunting, and then mentions that he met a giant.
Yeah, he had a giant friend that came by, and he gave him his picture book.
Mm-hmm.
That's definitely not going to make a return later.
And so then it's there's definitely a look between Wolf and the inspector,
oh hell.
Yeah, the inspector is definitely suspicious, but the kid did just talk about hunting elephants, so maybe he's just telling little stories. But there's definitely the room gets quiet when he mentions the giant. And so then the Baron takes him up to his room, and then he, gets into a little bit more detail about the giant. And yeah, he definitely saw the creature, because he's very specific about what the giant looks like.
Yeah, and it appears that he's just walking through the room, just as pretty as you please.
I think he says he came through the wall.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so then the Baron rushes to the lab, and sure enough, the creature's not there. Ygor's not there. He's wandering around. And then he raises this weird hole thing in the floor, and goes down to the lower level. And sure enough, there's the creature.
Yeah, just tries to sneak up on him initially, and then it just is like, nah, here I am. It just reveals itself all at once. And apparently he doesn't he can't speak anymore. So he's lost that ability.
Yeah, somewhere between that second and third movie, a lot has changed for the creature.
Yeah, we'll find out in the cousin, or the brother of Frankenstein, whenever that is released, why he can't speak. But he also sees his own reflection for what we think maybe could be the first time, and he doesn't like what he sees.
Yeah, he's definitely not happy about that. Right before he sees his reflection, he's kind of doing the childlike thing again. He seems sort of friendly. And then, as soon as he sees that mirror, he gets angry. His temper flares up. And then Wolf kind of approaches him, and you see them both in the mirror together. And the creature kind of you can see him pointing out, here we are, the two sons of Frankenstein. Right. And look at you and look at me.
Right. It's like they do have that brotherly connection.
Yeah, I really appreciate that about this movie. Definitely the creature is still very persecuted, but, Wolf is definitely more willing to give him a chance than Henry was. And Henry created him, we talked about it before, but, from the moment he wakes up in the first movie, Henry has shunned him. And, in this one, when there's even some evidence to maybe indicate that maybe Wolf shouldn't be so open and welcoming to him, he still is. He's still, like you said, it's this brother connection. And he has this vow that he's going to make him well in the mind.
And that's where Ygor comes up from the ladder near the sulfur pit, and he gets close to his friend the monster, and they kind of have their talk about how he is Igor's best friend, and they once again take care of each other in all these tough times and all the stuff they've gone through. They've been there for each other.
Yeah, and that kind of carries, because the Baron's like, he's not well in the mind. I can make him better. And Igor's like, don't you touch him again. Like, he's well enough for me. And that does feel like, when you love somebody, you see past their flaws and everything, and like, they're perfect to me, and that's definitely the vibe you get from this scene is like, Wolf just sees the problems and wants to fix them. And Igor's like, no, you're not going to mess with our bond.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Anything you do could take this person away from me.
Yeah, exactly.
I can't have that. Of course, Benson is also there at this point, I believe. And Ygor promises the doctor that Benson will never tell what he's seen.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's definitely some ominous tones to that conversation.
Yeah, we know. When Ygor says something, it's always going to be ominous. It's always going to be an implied threat, or it's going to be some way that he's worming his way out of, punishment or what have you, or he's just being snide about it.
Yeah.
Because they hung him once and have decided to leave him alone after they hung him once. Which, I guess he technically died, but also, finish your job, guys.
Death seems to be a very fluid thing in these movies.
That's also true.
It's not quite as concrete as it is in our world.
I guess so. I guess if you can bring a collection of body parts back from the dead, just being hung is fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's no big. But, Ygor also has plans for the monster, which we know what those plans are at this point. And at that point, they go back to see that Krog is still in the library.
Yes. And I think Benson sort of suggests that maybe we should tell the inspector what's going on.
Heavily implies, for sure.
Yeah, and the Baron refuses. Like, he's still on board at this point. He's very cagey with the inspector.
Yeah, suspiciously cagey.
Yeah.
If you were the inspector, it would almost be like, okay, he's doing the thing again, but we'll let him do the thing. That apparently seems to be Krog's method.
Yeah. And so then we finally get to see the creature in action with, being used as a weapon by Ygor. He kills a man in a wagon, and then we kind of see how Ygor gets the creature to do his bidding, which is music. So then that through line carries over from the last movie that that the creature loves music, and Ygor can play it's like a weird little horn thing that kind of sounds like
a clarinet that's also made out of a ram's horn.
Yeah.
Maybe the same exact ram that the monster is wearing that we're going to find out in Brother of Frankenstein when that comes out. So
this movie's just writing itself.
Exactly, 100%. No, but yeah, what do you think about? It was like diegetic music that Ygor was literally playing the song that was in the score.
Yeah, I loved that. And like you said, it's a little off because you've got a ram's horn playing like what is obviously a clarinet, but it's got this kind of haunting melody to it. It's very beautiful, and like it works. It works that like the creature would hear this and be soothed and want to be close to it.
And once the monster clubs the gentleman, what was his name? Newman? Was that his name?
I think so. Yeah.
Newmuller. That was
yes.
Newmuller.
Yes.
Yes. So yes, he strikes him on the back of the neck, grabs him, puts him under the cart and effectively runs him over with his own cart.
Yeah.
Trying to cover up the murder. But once again, this is revealed later, but his heart has also exploded.
Yeah, that they've just been like burst inside their chest.
Exactly.
And so this is an interesting sort of like moment because you see this death take place, and then the next scene, the inspector shows up at the Frankenstein house for dinner, and we find out that Benson is missing. And
Benson's gone. What happened to him?
Yeah, it's sort of disjointed that like you see the creature do this one murder, but now there's a different person that's missing. So that kind of keeps the mystery going a little while.
But Wolf, being the smart man that he is, immediately goes to Ygor Well, this is also later, so I'm jumping ahead of the gun because this actually is another great line that Lugosi drops. He basically goes to Ygor and he's like, "Did you kill Benson?" And Igor's like, "I no kill Benson. I scared him to death. I so no have to kill him to death." Come on, it's like, yeah, we know what you did.
Yeah,
so does Wolf.
I wrote that line down too. It's so good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Ygor tells Wolf that Benson has run away, and then Wolf just kind of toes the party line and starts sort of, that's what he starts telling me. Oh, he probably was out drinking. He was tired. Whatever. He just sort of goes along with it that he's run off and he'll be back eventually. Mm-hmm. And then, then the inspector gets called away because of the murder of the man in the cart.
Yeah, Herr Neumüller.
Yes. So, I mean, it's just like death, like back to back to back. There's just so much going on. And so he's examining the body. He thinks it's a murder. That's when we find out, or he wants the coroner to check the heart. And so that that's when we start to find out that it's part of this string of murders. And then we see Ygor walking down the street, and he just makes a little surreptitious chalk mark on a door as he walks past. And what could that be about?
Some apothecary's house, I believe, or is a place of business. Mm-hmm. Emil Lang, apothecary.
Yes. And then, so then we have the Baron and his wife speaking. I think her name is Evelyn. She hates it. She hates living here. Mm-hmm. She's ready to leave. Which works out because he's decided he wants to send her away to Brussels so that he can get everything in order in the town. So then they go to their weird head-to-head beds to go to sleep, but are soon woken up by the sound of Igor's ram's horn clarinet.
Yes. Yep. And so then he comes in upon Emil Lang, apothecary.
So the creature sees the chalk mark, and so there we see that's part of the whole way that this setup works. Is Ygor makes a mark, plays a song, the creature goes and finds the mark, and makes quick work of anybody inside of there.
So at this point, the creature has killed all 8 of the jurors that have sentenced Ygor. Now, I've got to ask this though. Like, I must have missed it. I don't know, but what about smacking them on the back of the neck causes their heart to explode?
Yeah, it's never really... Yeah, they never really spell out exactly how these things happen. Because, like, at first I thought, like, oh, he, like, maybe chokes them and then, like, stomps on their chest or something. Yeah, I don't know. It's never really spelled out. But something about the great force that the creature has causes hearts to explode when he attacks.
Right. I was almost expecting, like, the cosmic rays to, like, have some effect on that. But no, just he hits them really hard, their hearts explode, and then he does whatever he does to try and cover it up. But
he must have the 5-point exploding heart technique from Kill Bill.
That's what it is. He's a master of martial arts. He learned that while in Brother of Frankenstein. So that's how he killed the sheep and the shepherd.
Yeah, there we go.
5-heart exploding. Yeah, okay. All right. All right, I think we're done with that joke. I'll leave it be.
So finally, there's, an angry mob shows up. They're starting to get suspicious, and they're just, like, out the window, just, like, pitchforks and torches and all that. And the inspector kind of comes up and, he's there to protect the family. That he's using that as like a way to be there and to continue his investigation, because he's definitely still suspicious that the House of Frankenstein is where he's going to solve these cases.
Absolutely. And of course, Wolf is not doing himself any favors by acting super sketchy, throwing the darts erratically at the board. Every once in a while he gets a bullseye, so good on him, but yeah, he's clearly exuding a lot of nervous, guilty energy.
Oh, yeah, and he's, like, super passive-aggressive. Like, he's like, Did you hear that, honey? I'm under arrest. I guess I've been arrested. I must have done something. And the inspector's like, chill out, man. You're not arrested. I'm just here to help. But, yeah, like, he's definitely just trying to, like, go overboard to, downplay everything that's been going on.
Yeah, it's obvious that this Frankenstein is not in control. And at this point, I think he knows it. So he knows that Ygor is doing something, not what he's doing. he doesn't know because the music is just bothering him.
Yeah.
Krog's subtly kind of hinting that maybe there's, other things. You may not be the bad guy here, but I want to be here just in case you are.
Yeah. And somehow the inspector ends up like in a little chat with just him and Peter to get some more information about the giant.
And lo and behold, what does Peter have?
Benson's watch.
Oh no! So at that point, Krog does know that Benson's dead at this point.
Yeah, Vincent is dead, and Vincent died in the house. There's definitely something going on. Whether it was Wolf or the creature or Ygor, somebody killed Vincent in this house.
Right, and they've got to find the body, though. He wants to definitely find that body, and hasn't done so just yet.
Yeah, so then I think he gets called away again. There's another death. It's just the Baron or the inspector is just called back and forth. It's just constantly like he's investigating at the house. Somebody's dead, so he's got to go back to town. Goes back to the house to investigate. He's just running back and forth the whole movie.
I mean, I would be tired if I was doing it, honestly.
And so then the Baron goes to the lab and like has a moment where he's thinking about killing the creature. He's got like a big rock and is going to smash his head. Mm-hmm. And Ygor stops him. And that's when Ygor finally admits that he used the creature to kill the 8 men who sentenced him to death.
Yep, he lays it all out on the line. So we now know the plan of Ygor and what he was up to the entire time.
Yeah, as if we didn't already have that pretty well suspected at this point. It's now out on the table. And again, to kind of corroborate your subtextual reading, like Ygor says, "He's mine. You go away, not me. Right. Like we're together. You need to leave.
We're done with you now. You may go and leave us to our happy little life." And I do think that's interesting that Ygor has his endgame. He won. As far as his plan was concerned, more or less. He's killed all the people that sentenced him. And then he has the monster. So that was kind of a sweet note to end it on, or at least for his story, I would say.
Yeah, and you get the sense that like maybe if everybody had left them alone after this, I don't know that Ygor would still continue to use the monster for murders. Like I think he had he wanted to get his revenge, but theoretically, if the rest of this movie played out differently, they might have just like gone off into the sunset and had a little hut in the woods and raised sheep themselves and gardened and just had a nice little life where Ygor picks up where the blind man left off and plays little songs and they just live happily ever after.
Exactly.
But unfortunately, that's not how things play out.
Unfortunately not, yep.
Yeah, so then the inspector comes back, reports that the apothecary is dead now, and that the villagers think the creature did it, and or that a creature did it, I think is Wolf says, "Is this my father's old monster, or am I supposed to have made a new one? What's the theory here?"
And pretty much Krog kind of spills the beans that it's like, yeah, we don't think it's you. We think it's your buddy Ygor at this point.
But
and the
yeah, but we do have evidence that we've got Benson's watch, so we're gonna arrest you for Benson's murder at least.
Exactly, we're gonna charge you with his murder, so we at least have something to do. But
yeah, which is the normal police procedural thing. Like we can't, we have suspicion that you did this, but we'll pull you in on some other charges that we can make stick for now until
unless you can help us out.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, if you can figure this out for us, we can get this cleaned up, and no one has to go to jail exactly. So,
and that's when the inspector says something about that. Ygor has an alibi for all the deaths, so that's why they never pursued that. Even though obviously it's very suspicious if the 8 people who sentenced you to death all show up dead.
Right.
But like he said that he had alibis for all 8 of them, but like we saw a couple things where he's just like hanging out in a windowsill playing the ram's horn. So I don't know, maybe somebody noticed him out the window and that was a good enough alibi.
I guess maybe him playing the music was enough that everyone was like, "Oh dear heavens, stop playing that clarinet music." He's like, "I'm just disturbing the peace. I'm not doing anything evil."
Exactly. And then, so then I think the inspector goes to, the Baron goes to confront Ygor about everything.
He's going to kick him off his estate. I'm going to kick that Ygor off of my property.
Yeah, so they get into a bit of a tussle, and Ygor tries to attack the Baron with a hammer, and the Baron shoots him.
Right? Just pulls out that pistol and doesn't unload into him, but definitely gets enough shots that Ygor is now mortally wounded. And at the same time, the inspector manages to find a false door, and what should be behind that false door other than
Benson's body. Yeah. So yeah, that's suspicious. And yeah, then I think we go back to back to the Baron, and the creature shows up, and he finds Igor's body. And again, this is one of the like emotional set pieces of the movie is he's lost his only friend again. Over and over again, the creature just has no luck, and the like wail of grief that he lets out when he finds Igor's body is I mean, it's heartbreaking.
Right. The suddenness actually shocked me. Like I know in the other ones they're like, oh, this is going to shock you. You're going to be scared. It's like, no, this one did it. At least for that brief moment. Actually, a couple other things later on, because this whole thing is tense now. We're now rubber banding between the lab, the house, and kind of back and forth between these characters.
Yeah, and it's interesting. We were kind of joking about that. Like you could tell what was going on with the murders pretty early on, but for all, I mean, I don't think they were necessarily trying to hide that. I mean, I think it was it was out in the open for you, but that's still just the tension is ratcheting up because. Like we know what the inspector knows, we know what the Baron knows, and there's just this tension building between them as everything kind of comes out.
Right, and like we were saying, it comes to a head when the monster finds out that his only friend in this world is dead by the Baron. Well, dead.
Yeah.
Maybe not by the Baron's hand, but that's when the pressure effectively goes off, and he goes absolutely insane. When they cut back to him, he's tearing up all the equipment, everything in the lab, throwing it into the sulfur pit, and it's just more is building into that sulfur pit. This thing that's been in the background the entire time.
Yeah, it's like the sulfur just is sort of like a metaphor. It's just like bubbling with rage and anger. And then we have the moment that I think you kind of alluded to earlier that is sort of like a symbolic, sort of complete disavow of like anything human. The creature picks up the picture book that Peter gave him and like looks at it for a moment, and you think like, oh, this is going to calm him down, that there's still good in the world. But no, he rips it to shreds. And the creature is done with humanity at this point.
That moment, that look in his face whenever he went from just holding it lovingly to just ripping the book in half, it was like, oh no, what's he gonna do? And then, of course, I believe that's when our friend Peter shows up.
Yeah, the creature sneaks through the passageway, the same one that Benson was found in, and knocks out a servant woman and takes Peter and brings him back to the lab. And then we get back to the sulfur pool, and it looks like along with all the scientific equipment, Peter's going in the pool.
Mm-hmm. That's what it looks like, for sure. But, of course, that monster does have some humanity, and he's decided that Peter's actually his little friend. So he puts him down.
Well, and Peter would, if we look at this movie being called Son of Frankenstein, and you have Wolf, who's the son of Henry, you have the creature, who's the son of Henry, and that they're brothers, but then you also have...
nephew of Frankenstein.
Yeah, this is Peter is the creature's nephew, effectively, and, Peter is also a son of Frankenstein. Like, this movie is all of these generations of the sons carrying things on. And so, yeah, despite him giving up on humanity and tearing up the book, he can't throw the boy into the pit. And then the inspector shows up, and there's a place where the creature can direct his rage. And
he does. Once again... This poor inspector, twice in his life, he loses that arm as the monster just rips it, just slings it across the room.
And that feels like that. This movie is a lot about like echoes. Fritz Ygor has died twice now. The creature has died and been resurrected many times over, and now the inspector has had the same arm torn off twice.
Exactly.
So that's. there's a lot of like echoing, which I guess like a son is sort of like an echo of a father, you know, so it sort of continues this thing of like the repetition.
Right. It's like the cycle's playing out again and again and again.
Exactly.
But by God, Dr. Frankenstein comes in on that pulley that he used to bring up that weird stone that we were talking about a little bit earlier. He like a professional wrestler swings in and kicks the monster, saving the inspector at this point, kicks him into the sulfur pit.
Yeah, down there with, you know, I guess, you know, with his family, you know, like if his mother's lightning, you've got all the scientific equipment that burst him, and he's going back to that. And yeah, it's definitely like the action movie moment of the movie. Like, swings in like Indiana Jones, and it's great.
Right, and did you, like, this is something that I think Terminator 2 may have cribbed from this movie specifically, was that there was those little marks of fire, or actually the little fires all around the sulfur pit, but then you do get that last shot of the monster kind of bobbing in the sulfur pit.
Oh, yeah.
Before he goes down. And I'm like, so maybe that's where Arnie and James Cameron got that thumbs up at the end.
Yeah. And then, like, as these movies, you know, as the habit with these movies, we end up with like a little quick epilogue that's like a happy ending to try to tie things together. And man, this one is fast. It's like 15 or 30 seconds long. It's
like he gives a little short speech, and everyone's like, "Yay, goodbye, thank you for leaving," and he's like, "Well, toodaloo," and then just hops in the train and it's over.
Yeah, it ends very abruptly. He tells the villagers, "You can have the town. Sorry about all that. Sorry about the trouble. It's yours now." And then they jump on the train and peace out, and that's it.
Right, you can have the estate. You're good. Use it however you want. I'm getting out of here. That was probably, I would have liked some time to breathe after that, but, you know, that's how they chose to end it. That's how they chose to end it.
Yeah, I mean, it would have made more sense to just end on the creature in the pit, but, like, you know, definitely you get this vibe from these movies that, like, they want sort of a happy ending to wrap up the movies, so they had to throw this in there. But, yeah, it does feels very abrupt.
Right. Absolutely. But I honestly got to say, like, the original Frankenstein is a classic for a reason, right?
Oh, yeah.
And The Bride introduced really cool characters. It had a actually pretty memorable villain in Dr. Pretorius. But I think, as far as these movies are concerned, these three movies, I like Son the best. Like, it was the tensest. Like, it was longer than it probably needed to be because of all the back and forth. They definitely could have cut that out. But there actually, like, were moments where I was worried for people. You know? There was horror in this horror movie.
Oh, yeah. It's definitely, there's more of a plot. Like, the other movies, it's kind of, like, based around a couple set pieces. There's just, like, a couple key moments and then just a little bit to connect them together. But, like, this movie, there's intrigue. There's a little bit of a mystery. It definitely pulls you along. Like, you know, it's like a good half hour longer than the others, but it doesn't really feel like it because it's quick cuts between the scenes. You're back and forth between the council house and the Frankenstein home, and, you know, you get the morgue. There's just a couple sets, and they're just like, you know, quick scenes back and forth. And it just, I mean, it keeps you on the edge of your seat through the whole thing. Right. And as you mentioned, Ygor is definitely a big part of that. Like, he's really the star of this movie.
Yeah, this is his movie. This doesn't matter for Frankenstein. This doesn't matter for the monster. This is an Ygor movie, primarily. The first, technically. And, well, I believe next week it'll be his second outing. So maybe those bullets weren't so fatal. Or maybe something else happens.
Yeah, we will have to see. We're continuing on in the series. So next week will be The Ghost of Frankenstein.
The Ghost of Frankenstein with Lon Chaney Jr. as the monster. The Wolfman is now the monster.
Exactly.
Well, he was always the monster. Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah.
Right.
So, if you're following along, watch that movie, and we'll see you in a week with that one.
Well, everyone, to be continued.
Looks like you survived another episode. The Frankencast is a production of FCR Media. It's hosted by Anthony Bowman and Eric Velasquez. Follow us on Twitter at The Frankencast, or send us a letter at thefrankencast@gmail.com. Our cover art is by Amanda Keller. You can find her at Keller Illustrations on Instagram. Our theme music is by Vivek Abhishek. Thanks for listening.